Three things you need to know about the latest urban unemployment figures released by the government. So these are quarterly numbers that the government releases, mind you, only for urban areas. The all India rural plus urban numbers get released once a year, will happen later. So what does this data say? First, chuck unemployment. India's major problem is not unemployment, it is underemployment. Let me explain. Only around 50% of the urban working age population is actually seeking work. That is, they are either employed or they are unemployed. The remaining half of the working age population is just out of the labor force. It could be that they've given up searching for a job, or some of this could be explained by women who are staying back at home. So in India, labor force participation rate is the more important metric to watch out for than unemployment rate, which is essentially just the fraction of the labor force that is unemployed. So are more and more people becoming part of the labor force, or are they just staying out? Well, the good news is that the labor force participation rate in urban India has indeed been steadily increasing from around 47% a couple of years back to over 50% currently. I mean, it's still only half of the working age population, but hey, it's a change in the right direction. Second question, people who actually have a job, how has the situation changed for them? Well, this is how the urban workforce currently looks like. A little over one third of it are own account workers, basically self employed people working alone or with a few partners. Think of the couple of guys maybe at your street corner selling chaat, or a vegetable or a fruit vendor. Around 6 to 7% are essentially unpaid workers in their family enterprises. Arguably, this is the worst possible situation to be in. So, your family is running a small shop or a workshop, and you're basically working there for free. Around 50% are regular salaried workers, and roughly 11% are casual workers. By the way, the composition looks very different at an all India level, where you take rural and urban. And this is part of India's employment problem. See how the regular salaried workforce shrinks from nearly half of the workforce in urban India to barely a little over 20% when you take the all India situation. Meanwhile, the share of casual workers and unpaid family labor picks up quite a lot, which is a big problem for India, because what this essentially means is that a big chunk of your workforce is struggling to get paid enough, isn't getting skilled enough, and isn't getting enough social security. But back to urban India. What does the latest data tell us about the trends in each of these categories? Well, there's good news and there's bad news. The good news is that the share of casual workers is coming down. The bad news is everything else. The worst of the categories, unpaid family labor, has actually picked up quite sharply. Meanwhile, the share of regular salaried workers has barely increased and actually is lower than what it was before the pandemic. And people who are self employed in their own enterprises are roughly at the same level. So, yes, labor force participation is increasing. So, more and more people are entering the labor force, but most of the workers seem to be getting absorbed in unpaid family labor, which isn't really great and is essentially telling you that India's growth model is not working for a majority of its workers. Now, in an ideal world, it would have been more reassuring if the share of regular salaried workforce had increased, because that means that as the economy is growing, formal jobs are being created. And finally, let's talk about point 3, the ever so popular unemployment rate. As I said, this doesn't really mean much for India, because unemployment rate doesn't count people sitting at home, which is around half of the working age population. The unemployment rate is only the fraction of people who are willing to work and who are searching for a job, but can't seem to get it. And the good news is that this share has actually been going down. Overall unemployment rate has come down from around 8.5% before the pandemic to 6.6% as of FY24. And interestingly, so has youth unemployment. I mean, it's still worryingly high at 17%, but the fact remains that it is lower than the pre pandemic levels of 23%. So, what are the three takeaways on urban employment? One, more people are entering the labor force searching for work than they were a few years back. Two, more among those people are finding work, which is evidenced by the fall in unemployment rate. And three, unfortunately, they are not getting absorbed in the regular salaried workforce, which points to India's continuing jobless growth problem. By the way, if you want to know more about India's employment situation and the key issues involved at an all India level, please do check out my previous video on this. The link is in the description. If you find this kind of analysis useful, please do subscribe. And if you'd like to support me, the super thanks button is below. As always, for more such insights, stay tuned to The Bond Economist.